Amplify this. Here's another blast, another hand of the week. Extrasensory perception. Have you ever had ESP when calling a player's hand? Okay, let me rephrase that question so it doesn't sound quite so mystical. Have you ever called a person's poker hand so exactly that you even scared yourself? I'm not talking about thinking Matt has pocket aces, pocket kings, or pocket queens. I'm talking about saying to yourself, Matt has pocket queens, period. I know this because it popped into my head. How exactly did it pop into your head, you ask? 3 possibilities leap to mind. Possibility number 1 is based on practiced observation, logic, intuition, and perception. Logic told me it was aces, kings, or queens because Matt plays so tight. But the little bit of fear I observed in pre-flop leads me to believe that he has queens. Possibility number 2 is that some part of your mind remembers exactly the way Matt acted the last time he had pocket queens. I have seen it before. Possibility number 3 is that you really look into your opponent's soul. Let's elaborate on possibility number 3, in which some form of ESP that humans don't fully understand yet occurs. Uh-oh, I've said it. Now please don't send me an email that applauds my conversion to belief in ESP. Sorry, Mom, I'm not a true believer yet. Also, don't believe that I've cracked yet. I may eventually crack from the extreme pressure of being a professional poker player, but my wife tells me that that has not happened yet. In examining the possibility of ESP, I am merely exploring all of the options here. Where do logic, intuition, observation, perception end, and where does ESP begin? I don't know if ESP ever begins, but check out the following 2 stories that I have to offer you. The first story illustrates the power of logic, feel, observation, and perception. The second story goes a bit beyond all of that and makes me wonder about the existence of something else. Why don't you judge for yourself? In the first story, I managed to call the exact hole cards that Kevin McBride and Scotty Nguyen held in a big pot in the 1998 World Series of Poker before the hands were flipped up. Check out the 1998 World Series of Poker video. I can tell you that my intrinsic ability to do that was all about logic, intuition, observation, and perception. When Scotty raised the hand pre-flop, Kevin gave off an easy-to-read vibe of strength. Well, he smooth-called Scotty's raise. On the end, with the board showing 4, 6, king, ace, queen, the cards came off in that order. Kevin bet 80,000 and Scotty raised about 250,000. I was fairly certain that Scotty had the nuts, or Jack-10, because he was showing extreme strength on the end by the way he was acting and betting. I felt especially certain that this was the case because he seemed weak when he checked both the flop and 4th Street. Therefore, the first half of the puzzle wasn't all that hard to figure out. Well, at least for me. I had noticed that when the ace came off on 4th Street, Kevin made a small imperceptible jump in his chair, and I therefore assumed that the ace had hit him. I know that Scotty read Kevin's strength both pre-flop and on 4th Street, which allowed Scotty to check the hand, trapping Kevin, and benefit him by winning $330,000 in the last round of betting. When Kevin debated the $250,000 call in the river, his seriousness told me he had aces up. Since Kevin had acted weakly on the flop but strong pre-flop, I assumed that he did not have a king with his ace, but rather a queen. I did not think Kevin would study all that time and then act as he did with only ace-jack. I then announced that I thought that Scotty had Jack-10 and I thought that Kevin had ace-queen suited. I admit right here, right now, that knowing it was suited was a lucky guess. Sure enough, Scotty then flipped up Jack-10, Kevin flipped up ace-queen suited, and I looked like a super genius that time out because they caught it and they're playing it on ESPN. But I think that a few players could have made the same deductions that I made, although, give myself some credit, maybe not as quickly as I did. All right, you caught me being vain. What a surprise that is. Now let's examine another hand in which I almost knew what Alan Colen's hole cards were at the final table of the Tournament of Champions in 2000, the TOC 2000. To me, this hand is more about ESP ESP, or unexplained knowing, than the last hand. Alan Colin, the second chip leader with $470,000, opened for $70,000, and Josh Aryeh, the chip leader with $570,000, raised it up, making it $220,000 to go. Without any hesitation whatsoever, Alan Colin moved all in for his whole $470,000, about $250,000 more, and Josh was put to the test. Immediately, when Alan moved in $470,000, I thought that he was making a stand with pocket tens. That 10-10 read of mine just stuck in my head, although I don't know if I made that call on the broadcast or not. I do remember that we called Josh's hands as pocket jacks, which he later told Daniel Negreanu was the case. Josh did end up folding his hand pre-flop, which I think is okay as long as he put Alan on a higher pair than his jacks. Over the next few hours, I couldn't get this vision of 10-10 out of my head. Did a whole card flash, you ask me now? No, I wasn't that close to the table. Not close enough to see a card flash. I was 25 feet away, and Alan threw his hand in face down. Also, there was no talk about the hand at all after that point in time during the entire final table play. 3 hours later, while I was interviewing Alan for the live internet broadcast at philhellmuth.com, I wanted to ask if he had 10-10 that hand, but it just didn't seem to be appropriate. So I waited until the trophy presentation was over. I then told Daniel Negreanu, I have to know about that hand. I just know he had pocket tens. I'm going to go over there and ask him about it now. I said, listen, Alan, when you played that big pot against Josh and wound up going all in, I was certain you had pocket tens. He replied with shock and disbelief. Wow, that's exactly what I had that hand. I knew that he was telling me the truth. Maybe I saw the I'm going to make a stand look on his face, and thus was able to narrow it down to 10s, 9s, or 8s. But how could the 10-10 exactly stick in my craw, as TJ Cloutier likes to say, and drive me crazy to the point where I had to ask Alan if he had pocket 10s in this hand 3 hours later? I don't mean to suggest that I have ESP. I know that if that were the case, then I would win a lot more poker tournaments than I do. But as my good friend Ted Forrest likes to say, what the heck is going on? Was there really enough information here to where a perceptive poker player could guess that Alan had exactly 10-10 in this hand? Maybe, but the very perceptive Daniel Negreanu was guessing aces, kings, queens, or ace-king on the internet broadcast. Was I just reading people particularly well then? Probably. After all, I had finished tying a bunch of tournaments in a row. Was it just a lucky guess that I made? Would I have been surprised and shocked if Alan had told me he had pocket 9s that hand? I think I would have, but be that as it may, the 10-10 really did stay with me for some reason. Where do logic, intuition, observation, and perception end? And where does extrasensory perception, ESP, begin? I amplify. Do you?